A reading from the book of the prophet Amos. Seek good and not evil, that you may live. Then truly will the Lord, the God of hosts, be with you as you claim. Hate evil and love good, and let justice prevail at the gate. Then it may be that the Lord, the God of hosts, will have pity on the remnant of Joseph. I spurn your feasts, says the Lord. I take no pleasure in your solemnities. Your cereal offerings I will not accept, nor consider your stall-fed peace offerings. Away with your noisy songs. I will not listen to the melodies of your harps. But if you would offer me burnt offerings, then let justice surge like water, and goodness like an unfailing stream. Verbum Domini. To the upright I will show the saving power of God. To the upright I will show the saving power of God. Hear my people, and I will speak. Israel, I will testify against you. God, your God, I am. To the upright of heart show the saving power of God. Not for your sacrifices do I rebuke you, for your burnt offerings are before me always. I take from your house no bullock, no goats out of your fold. To the upright of heart show the saving power of God. For mine are all the animals of the forest, beasts by their thousands on my mountains. I know all the birds of the air, and whatever stirs in the plains belongs to me. To the upright I will show the saving power of God. If I were hungry, I should not tell you, for mine are the world and its fullness. Do I eat the flesh of strong bulls, or is the blood of goats my drink? To the upright I will show the saving power of God. Why do you recite my statutes and profess my covenant with your mouth, though you hate discipline and cast my words behind you? To the upright of heart, the saving power of God.
Alleluia. As the first fruits of his creation. Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia.
Dominus vobiscum. Lectio Sancti Evangelii Secundum Mattheum. When Jesus came to the territory of the Gadarenes, two demoniacs who were coming from the tombs met him. They were so savage that no one could travel by that road. They cried out, "What have you to do with us, Son of God? Have you come here to torment us before the appointed time?" Some distance away, a herd of many swines were feeding. The demons pleaded with him, "If you drive us out, send us into the herd of swine." And he said to them, "Go then." They came out and entered the swine, and the whole herd rushed down the steep bank into the sea, where they drowned it. The swineherds ran away, and when they came to the town, they reported everything, including what had happened to the demonics. Thereupon the whole town came out to meet Jesus. When they saw him, they begged him to leave their district. Verbum Domini.
This past Sunday, our own governor, the governor of Alabama, Governor Bob Riley, proclaimed a day of prayer for all Alabamians to pray for a solution to the Gulf oil crisis, the disaster that continues even in our own day. And he said, throughout our history, Alabamians have humbly turned to God to ask for his blessings and to hold us steady during times of struggle. This is certainly one of those times. And so he was exhorting all of the citizens of Alabama to pray for a solution to this oil disaster. But also, he said, to give thanks to God for the blessings we have received and for his continued guidance during these difficult times. And this disaster is really a lesson in humility for all of us, that we do not have absolute control over all things, that we do need divine assistance in our lives, in the governance of our lives, in the carrying on of our lives. So we do need God's assistance, and in all humility we need to admit that. Something that we are sometimes loath to do or slow to do, to admit the need for God in our lives, in our government, in the way the society is run. That we need to be people who pray, to ask God for light, for a solution to this disaster, which continues and continues and continues, seemingly without a solution. But we also need to live in such a way that we're living in accord with God's will. Today we heard from Psalm 50, the psalmist say, the inspired words, "Why do you recite my statutes, profess my covenant with your mouth, though you hate discipline and cast my words behind you?" And the prophet Amos was sent to the people of Israel in a time of prosperity. This was the 8th century before Christ. But it was also a time of great injustice because the landowners, landlords, the rulers, the merchants were many times exploiting and taking advantage of the poor and of the weak. And so while there was some prosperity in Israel, there was also great injustice that was taking place. And so God inspires Amos to go and to proclaim his word to change. And so we heard today from Amos chapter 5, "Seek good and not evil, that you may live. Then truly will the Lord, the God of hosts, be with you as you claim. Hate evil and love good. Let justice prevail." And the final words from today, "If you would offer me your offerings, then let justice surge like water and goodness like an unfailing stream." And so they had their offerings, they had their worship, and yet their lives were not reflective of living out this covenant with God. That it was something that was simply exterior. It wasn't something where their own lives and their own selves were being changed to live in accord with God's will. So I think that I know that that's part of the solution to our own crises today, is that each of us need to convert, and first of all ourselves. But we as a nation need to change the direction in which we are going, that we are people who seek God, who love God, who pray to God, but also that we seek to conform our lives and our ways to His ways. So to seek good and not evil. And this is really the basic moral principle for us, to seek good, to hate evil, and to avoid evil, to seek justice. Now, as I mentioned, Amos is speaking at a time of injustice where many of the poor and the weak were being taken advantage of or being exploited. And recently in the Wall Street Journal, there was an article that had this title. And the title said, "How about a good Catholic story?" And this was written by Daniel Henninger for the Wall Street Journal. How about a good Catholic story? And he told the story of Cristo Rey, which is a movement of high schools, Catholic high schools, and how they carry out their work. He's reporting especially this past June 10th. He says Cristo Rey High School in East Harlem, New York, will graduate all of its 50 seniors. All come from families near or below the poverty level. All will attend college. And this school, this movement of the Cristo Rey Network schools, has 24 high schools, the goal of making its students ready to attend college. Some 6,000 students in the U.S. in cities like Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, and Detroit. In St. Martin de Porres High School in Cleveland, near St. Clair Avenue and 55th Street, a hard neighborhood, its college acceptance rate this year was also 100%. He goes on to say that there's no requirement for those applying students to be Catholic, but about 60% of them are. These schools take no public money. They are private schools, which are financed with a clever, innovative system. And he goes on to describe how they finance these schools in these poverty areas of these large cities. Taking these students that are really, they're not the highest students. In fact, they don't accept necessarily the highest achieving students, but those that are having difficulties, those who live at the poverty level or even below the poverty level, with the goal of making them ready to go to college. So he says this system pays students to work, one of the most innovative ideas I've seen in a while in American education. Every student at Cristo Rey High School works full-time 1 day a week with a local private company or not-for-profit company. It's real work, not make work. And the companies pay the students' teams between $20,000 in Denver, $30,000 in Washington, D.C. That money goes into the school's annual budget. So an employer gets a Cristo Rey student every day of the week, freshmen through seniors. So on Tuesday, the school might assemble all the sophomores and shepherd them to work and then gather them at the day's end. This means the students have to do 5 days of schoolwork in 4 days. And that alone may have a lot to do with the success rate. This work contributes about 65% of the school's budget and keeps average tuitions low, about $2,300. As the president of the network has noted, our students are by far away our biggest donor. And so it continues the honorable tradition of working your way through school. And then he goes on to talk about speaking with some of the seniors at Cristo Rey's Harlem School. He said the time they spent working at these big firms, and these are firms like Black & Decker, Prudential Life, Citadel Investment, the Cleveland Indians, Pitney Bowes, Wells Fargo, Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan Chase, Xerox, a long list of different companies that hire these students. And in speaking with these students, he said these seniors who had spent time working at these big-time firms, it left them self-assured, conversational, and direct. Though college is the goal, you already sense that they'll do fine in the long term. They became self-assured through this experience of work, of contributing to their own school and its success. See, this is something that we need to inculcate, that not everything is handed to us, not everything is given to us, and there's a certain satisfaction that comes in contributing, in making some contribution not only to our futures but to the futures of others. So there is this basic principle in the moral life that Amos prophesies today: seek good and not evil, hate evil and love good. When we think about today's gospel, where would those demons ask to be sent? Into the pigs. And much of our culture today is encouraging people to become like pigs, to become beasts, to become less than what we are. You see, those demons that were sent there, they were created good by God, but through their own radical choice of rejection of God, they became so much less. Send us into the pigs. And that's what a life of immorality, of choosing evil, leads us to become like beasts, to become like pigs. When we are called to reach higher, the spiritual life has often been described as climbing a mountain, that it is difficult, and it requires perseverance, and it requires daily effort and God's assistance. But what happens as you continue to climb up that mountain is you begin to see wider vistas. You begin to comprehend in a greater way a beauty. You begin to draw closer to God. You begin to see what you are called to become. Pope Benedict said this about what is the greatest, in his mind, what is the greatest defense of our Christian faith? And he says, I have often confirmed my conviction that the true apology of Christian faith, the most convincing demonstration of its truth against every denial, are the saints and the beauty that the faith has generated. Today, for faith to grow, we must lead ourselves and the persons we meet to encounter the saints and to enter into contact with the beautiful. St. Augustine had said in his Confessions, O beauty, ever ancient, ever new. That's how he described God. He is the source of all beauty, all goodness, all truth. And we're attracted to that because we're called to that, to grow in those attributes that are God's. This is what our faith brings about. This is what we see in this Cristo Rey school. It's taking these students and it's helping them to become more, to achieve their potential, to grow in virtue. Because our Catholic faith and our Catholic schools are there to help the whole person to grow, not just in technical knowledge, which is very limited, but also in character, in virtue, in wholeness, the whole person. The whole person needs to grow and to advance. That this is what God has for us, and this is where we find our greatest satisfaction. It's not always easy, but it's always good. And deep down, that's what we each long for, that we reach our potential, our fulfillment in God. Peter Kreeft, in his own journey into the Catholic faith, talked about how he had been taught growing up that the Catholic Church was the whore of Babylon. And yet he encountered for the first time listening to Palestrina and all of those beautiful harmonies in Palestrina. He said, this doesn't sound like it came from hell. This sounds more like what the angels must sound like in heaven. And then when he visited for the first time St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City, he said the whore of Babylon couldn't have made something so beautiful. That he realized and he understood there could not be such a disconnect between what is beautiful and what is true, what is good and what is true. And he could find all of these elements of goodness and beauty and truth in the Catholic faith, and that was one of the things that eventually brought him into the Catholic faith. Something that Pope Benedict says is the greatest apologetics in his mind, just the light of Christ that shines in the lives of the saints, the goodness that they bring to the 2,000-year history of the Church, this luminous trail of the saints, and the beauty that faith has produced. The greatest masterpieces in music and art were produced by people of faith. That there's something of the light of Christ that shines through the saints, shines through the works of the great artists in Western civilization. Finally, I'd like to conclude with a beautiful prayer of St. John Marie Vianney about how it is Jesus Christ who is that one that is going to lead us to the fulfillment of our being, to fulfillment of our existence. My Jesus, from all eternity, you were pleased to give yourself to us in love, and you planted within us a deep spiritual desire that can be satisfied only by you. I may go from here to the other end of the world, from one country to another, from riches to greater riches, from pleasure to pleasure, and still I shall not be content. All the world cannot satisfy the immortal soul. It would be like trying to feed a starving man with a single grain of wheat. We can be satisfied only by setting our hearts, imperfect as they are, on you. We are made to love you. You created us as your lovers. It sometimes happens that the more we know a neighbor, the less we love him. But with you, it is quite the opposite. The more we know you, the more we love you. Knowledge of you kindles such a fire in our souls that we have no energy left for worldly desires. My Jesus, how good it is to love you. Let me be like your disciples on Mount Tabor, seeing nothing else but you. Let us be like two bosom friends, neither of whom can ever bear to offend the other.